Hey everybody, welcome back to Vanta EDC. This is going to be my last video of 2023, and so it's pretty evident by the title, but this is going to be my top 10 knives that I purchased for my own personal collection this year. And so I guess I have to specify knives I purchased because these are not all knives that were released for the first time in 2023. But yeah, some of them are older designs, and over this year I bought way more than 10 knives. But I've sold some of those, and some of them are just not in. I mean, obviously it's a YouTube thing to do like top 10 at the end of the year, so not all, like, in a way these are really all the knives in my active rotation, you could say. The knives that I do have that I still have that aren't on this list are knives that I'm going to be selling, or I just don't. They're not in my active rotation. So yeah, we're just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna try to keep everyone the whole this video short and sweet ish. I can get long winded, but I wrote notes so that I could try to keep myself on track. So number 10 is the Spyderco Pair 3. And all these knives I've done videos on at this point, so none of them will be videos that are brand new to you if you follow my channel. And so yeah, the Spyderco Pair 3 S45VN. I got a base black G10 version when Spyderco was having their yearly sale, so I got a good deal on it, and then I was able to get these RGT custom scales. So in a way, really a part of the reason I got the Pair 3 was so that I could get these particular scales, because I really wanted some sort of scales with this Mexican blanket micarta. So in a way, the scales are not specific to the Pair 3 because that's a kind of an aftermarket modification. But the things I love about the Pair 3 are this action. It's on washers, for those of you who don't know. And so it made a big difference from when I first got it out of the box to when I took the knife apart and polished the washers. That'll be a trend with a few, maybe at least one or two other knives on this list. But yeah, it really wasn't super snappy like this. It wasn't easy for me to deploy reliably until I opened it up, took the washers out, polished them, and reassembled it. And now this thing is just so smooth. It just feels good. It's fun to wheel out and fidget with in that respect. And then, of course, but this compression lock, for anyone who's not familiar, the compression lock really is nice. Keeps your fingers out of the path of the blade as it's closing. It's fairly easy to get access to. And so, yeah, the other things I love about this knife, aside from the action, the compression lock, is, I mean, Spyderco, I guess what I've heard from other people is my first Spyderco, so I can't say from personal experience, but amazing factory edges. I haven't had to sharpen or strop this at all. Not that I've used it heavily, but yeah, I have used it some. So yeah, and I think overall it's just a great performance to value ratio, because from, at least especially getting on the sale that I got it in, you get S45, which I would say is in the top tier performance steels, at least at this present time. Just maybe like a half step or step below things like MagnaCut and Van X. So I think it's a really great value, especially if you're fine with just like the factory G10. And so, yeah, the only caveat really to me that made this be in my top 10 was just polishing the washers and getting these scales. But this is a classic design, one that many knife enthusiasts are very familiar with and probably have one, if not several, of. So number 9. Number 9 is my Tactile Knife Co. Rockwall, the Urban EDC Supply exclusive. So this is the Workerman Sagaiha milling pattern. And so I got this at the very beginning of 2023. It was my first Grail knife ever, really. And so it was, really exciting for me when I first purchased this. Now I don't carry it a ton, and it's definitely not obviously not like in my top 3, but still one that I have a lot of sentimental value attached to. And so the things I love about it, one of the more sentimental things being that it's made in Texas, and I was born in Texas. So really fun to be able to have a knife made by an American production company based in Texas. That's a very good design, especially for, I think it's their first design overall, if I'm not mistaken. And so yeah, other things, I love this, how snappy this is. and it's very satisfying, like almost like a thwack, even though it's such a small blade, small knife overall. And yeah, speaking of that, another thing I love is the compact size. This is one of the few knives that I have at this point that's just super easy to slip in pocket, and I'm not at all like worried about it, like, you know, being uncomfortable or bulging a bunch, or yeah, taking a ton of space in my pocket. So, and yeah, it's just a classy knife. Obviously, this is a very gentleman's oriented knife. And that scale milling is really what, you know, contributes a lot to that aesthetic. So yeah, Tactile Knife Co. Rockwall, the Urban EDC Supply version. So that's number 9. Number 8. This is my newest acquisition. I just will have released my initial impressions of it before this video, but the Kershaw Live Wire in Magnet Cuts, and this is the DLC bladed version. This is my first OTF that I've ever carried. I do own a Microtech. I've just never carried it, and I'm gonna sell it at some point. But yeah, so this is the first OTF I've ever carried, and things I love about this is, the one by far in a way is just how smooth and easy it is to actuate this thing. It helps that the switch is not super abrasive. Like the edges on the switch, on the steps of this switch, are not nearly as sharp as they are on Microtechs. So yeah, and I guess whatever they did with the springs inside the chassis or whatever, just so easy to open and close. So this has been like the knife I've been carrying around during, you know, gift exchanges and getting a bunch of packages and whatnot. It's just very easy to use as an EDC. And another thing that really makes it a great EDC is just how slicey and thin this blade is. It feels like it seems like it'd be a very delicate blade. I haven't, you know, been prying with it or using it to like climb a tree, so I'm not gonna speak to how tough the blade is, but yeah, this is great EDC sliciness. And other things that contribute to it being a good EDC overall is just the size to weight ratio. I think the blade is like 3.3 inches, and the overall thing weighs less than 3.3 ounces, like 3.0 something ounces. So great ratios there. And for an OTF, the ergos are pretty good. It has, you know, these like, not, I wouldn't call them choils per se, but, you know, good grooves to where your fingers can very naturally rest and get different levels of purchase. There's a lot of milling in different spots. So yeah, this is my number 8 of the year, and it's probably this low only because I've had it for the least amount of time. It would probably be higher if I'd had it for longer, but I've only had it for less than a month. So yeah. Pardon me, I'm still recovering from a sickness, and I'm stifling coughing fits here and there, and so I just need to make sure I stay hydrated so my throat doesn't completely dry out while I'm recording this. All right, number 7 is the Quiet Carry Drift. This is the second version of the Drift, the one with thumb studs. The first one had like a thumb hole, and then they most recently released a large version of the Drift. Now, so the Drift, got this also fairly early on in the year. I ended up essentially selling one knife from Blade Show, Texas, and using that money to buy this. And the maybe I'll just edit out all my coughing and struggles, but yeah, the reason I got this was because it's in Vanex. For those of you who don't know, Vanex Super Clean is essentially a corrosion proof steel. It's not just a highly stainless, but like essentially corrosion proof steel. So that was the biggest attraction for me, the thing I appreciate the most about this knife. I'm weird. I don't like opening things like oranges and clementines with my fingernails because I don't like getting like the crap under my nails. And so this is a knife that I literally would just use for things like that, which it's not that I eat those every day, but I eat them enough. And so, yeah, I have zero concern. Like, I still wipe off the acid residue after I do that, but like, there's no concern for me about, you know, any corrosion spots on this blade. It's a small knife, you know, it's a 3-inch blade, I believe, or just under 3 inches. So, depending on who you are and what you want knives for, that can be great. Other things I love is this action. This is another knife that runs on washers. Which for the longest time I thought, you know, if it's washers, the action just can't be good. But this is the first knife where I ever got washers and then polished them for myself. And then now it's not a fall shut knife on its own, but it is so smooth. Both the open and the close on this action is so good. So yeah, it's really satisfying for me to have washer knives, because I know I'm like there's much less chance of it getting gunked up. I won't have to clean it as frequently, and it also have such a smooth action. So yeah. Other things, I mean, this blade is super slicey. It's like, I think it's like a 0.09 inch blade stock, so very thin blade. The ergos on it are good, especially if you have like I have small hands. I have like medium-sized gloves, so for those of you with larger hands, that choil allows you still like a full 4-finger grip if you can't get your hand fully onto just the handle itself. And yeah, just the compact size makes it a great EDC. You know, I don't carry this that frequently now because I honestly have started gravitating towards larger knives, but you know, for places where you can't carry larger knives, places, or you know, when it's just easier to throw a smaller knife in pocket, this is a great option for a lot of reasons. Okay. Number 7 is the CGRB Echo, particularly the Knife Center exclusive with the black micarta and the titanium bolsters. Now, CGRB Echo, this is my favorite budget button lock by far. And yeah, things I love about it, I mean, this aesthetic, I think the video I titled when I did reviews like best budget EDC gentleman, or like, yeah, best budget gentleman's button lock. You know, this thing's like less than $75, I think. You know, you're not getting an amazing steel, but it's not a bad steel. It's AR RPM9. They're proprietary like powder form steel. But I mean, this button lock is super fidgety. You have this opening hole that you can reverse, you know, like reverse flick or thumb flick. You have this front flipper that you can use your thumb. You can side of your index finger. You can go over the top with it. It's just super fidgety. You know, this for a long time I was carrying this nonstop. I got this like I think I've had this for about half the year or so. So I just love how fidgety it is. I love the aesthetic. And then the blade itself, I mean, this is a very, both beautiful and I'd say very utilitarian blade. The blade shape, you know, this like sheep's foot-esque blade, so great for utilitarian cuts. It's very thin stock, and I love that finish too. It's kind of like a high polish belt satin maybe. I don't know exactly, but yeah, it's a great finish. You know, at this point, I don't really carry it honestly that much. Honestly, I can't even remember the last time I carried it because it just doesn't have the performance steel. Like all the knives that are coming up there that have been carrying a lot are basically Magna Cut or M390. So that's really the only. It's not even like a jab at it. It's just, you know, the reason why I've ultimately just not been carrying it is because it's not in a higher performance steel. So I don't want having these like corrosion proof steels. Those are things I want to carry all the time, not less than corrosion proof. So yeah. Okay, now we're getting into the top 5, which will definitely, also this is the only budget knife really on this list. You know, I'm kind of bougie. It's really for worse. I was about to say for better or for worse, but it's usually for the worse. Definitely for my bank account, and my wife is not happy about it. But yeah, we're just that's that. So number 5. This is not necessarily by far, but it's definitely my most expensive knife. Relatively new pickup, and this is the closest thing I have to a Safe Queen. I have carried it a few times, but it is not a Safe Queen, truly. This is the Sharp by Design Mini Evo, the special edition with the Damascus inlays and the etched Damasteel blade, Harpoon Tanto version. So, I mean, really the reason I got this knife is the blade. I mean, I don't care really for Damascus, the aesthetic or whatever. Obviously it's an expensive material and whatnot, but really this blade is everything. The shape of it, this very distinct Harpoon Tanto. I love Harpoon swedges. I don't love Tantos from a having to sharpen a standpoint, but from an aesthetic standpoint, especially in this configuration, amazing. And then, man, this Damasteel, I'm not one for loving Damasteel or Damascus all that often. Like the patterns don't do much for me, but this pattern, something about it, and it's etched, so meaning like it doesn't have the same sort of like hyper dark contrasting layers to it with the more, you know, like traditional silvery layers of a blade steel. And so I just love how, like, in a way it's not subtle, but and it's also very I think it's like double polished or something like that. So it's a very high polish, very intricate design that's not subtle, but at the same time not like gaudy the way some other Damasteels and Damascus patterns can be. And it's got this like awesome hollow grind, which is, you know, more of a utilitarian thing. And I definitely am not using this to cut a bunch of stuff. I've only cut like paper with it essentially. But yeah, this is just the most gorgeous blade to me. And so that was the big thing. But also, you know, I got it because I'd never gotten to try any Sharp by Design like knives in hand, and I've heard so much good things about the action of Sharp by Design. In large part because of his Brian Nadeau's proprietary detent nub, which is kind of like this ramp instead. It's not a ball, but yeah, it is such a distinct and crisp action. One that, yeah, it's just, you have to experience it for yourself. It's not something that, it's not like, you know, like life-changing, but at the same time it is one that I've not felt in any other knife with a traditional detent. And so it's just it's very satisfying. And then also on this knife, just, it's not fall shut in the true sense, but it needs so little coaxing for it to, like, it just glides. This is a very smooth, like probably the smoothest knife, well, the second smoothest knife on bearings, and the first one, yeah, it's my number one. So yeah, this Sharp by Design Mini Evo is just a beautiful knife. You know, it's virtually a safe queen. I've carried it a few times, but I'm not cutting much with it, slash really anything with it. It's just a beautiful knife. So yeah, I really kind of want a user, because I think it'd be fun to have a user Mini Evo. Great size, great profile, blah blah blah. You can go on and on. All right, number 4. Now we're getting into, this was a little tricky kind of to do the, I mean, this was tricky to rank, especially like the whole list really, but number 4 is the VECP button lock by Les George. So the VECP is essentially his production slash mid-tech-ish version of his custom rock eye design, like same silhouette, but just like, I guess, done at a higher quantity and, you know, like not as much customizability. But yeah, so this is the button lock version. If you follow my channel at all, I'm a really big button lock guy. I'm looking for like the perfect EDC button lock. This is not it, but it's a great button lock for really. I mean, far and away, the thing that I love most about it is this action. So this is also on washers. This is the only button lock on this list that from the factory comes on washers. And man, it is one of, if not the smoothest action of any knife I own. I think button locks kind of have a weird, I guess you could say, advantage on having smooth actions, because they don't have the same sort of like pressure being applied to them the way like lock bars apply pressure to like a traditional liner or frame lock. But yeah, the action on this, and the fact that it's washers that I didn't actually have to polish, like they were just this smooth, like out of the box. I did not get this brand new from the maker. I got it from a guy on like a Facebook group, but I don't think he really carried it all that much. And so, man, this action, and I think what helps too is just this blade is fairly hefty. Like this is like a 3.5 inch blade, I think. So it's probably got a decent amount of weight to it. So it's like a guillotine. Like when you depress that button, it's going. So yeah, and this is my only full titanium button lock right at the moment. And so there's something, you know, very satisfying about that. This is a hefty knife, even though it's pretty decently milled internally on the scales. And so that's another thing, is I appreciate the size and the heft of it. It's like a you know, full size, not a large knife, not like an extra large knife, but it's a full size knife, and it feels like that. And yeah, now at the same time, of all the knives on this list, this one has the most untapped potential, I would say. One being like, I mean, this like stonewash tie is like so smooth. It's like very slick. If your hands are at all like sweaty, or if there's, yeah, just any humidity in the air or whatever, this thing is pretty slippery. The jimping is very smooth. It's very knocked down. And so you actually don't get a ton of, it doesn't get a lot of purchase. It doesn't generate a lot of friction with your thumb. And there's a decent amount of button stick. Like you can hear that every time I depress it. There's like a distinct like click, which in my mind, a perfect button lock, it's not, there's no stick like that. So there's a lot of ways that this could be improved. It's a very expensive knife, but at the same time, it's just a really amazing action. And I love having a American-made titanium button lock in Magna Cut, no less, at 63 HRC. So yeah, so that was number 4, the Les George VCP button lock. Now, number 3, this is, I guess in a way, yeah, okay, anyway. So this is my last button lock in my top 10. And if you follow my channel, you might know what this is. This is the Protek Mordax, the MX 105 in particular, the stone-washed Magna Cut one with the black honeycomb scales. So for those of you that are a little less familiar with the Mordax, Protek has been, this is designed by Ferrum Forge. So Protek made a button lock version. This is like the second iteration. The first iteration was like the 20 CV one that they did with drop. And they changed a few things, like minor things. So they made the blade stock thinner and like the grind higher, I think. It's in Magna Cut now, and this awesome honeycomb pattern. So, you know, there's a lot of things I love about the Mordax. One, which is kind of the biggest surprise, is the ergos. You know, this choil, the overall feel of the handle in hand is just really good. I don't need to get into too many details. Both ergos are great on this. And this scale milling in particular, it's just, I mean, I like aesthetically, I like it, and then functionally, it's very good. It's not too rough. Like there's not too much grit and abrasion, but there's enough friction and traction for your hand. So that's awesome. And then really the action on it. So it actually is. So I swapped out the factory bearings for a skiff washers because. Having experienced this knife on washers, a button lock on, this was my first button lock on washers. I wanted to see how this would feel with washers in it. So it is not as snappy. Goodness gracious. It's not as snappy as it is with bearings, but it still very reliably deploys, and it is very smooth. There's something about, I think it's just the fact that, you know, on bearings, you have distinct points of contact between you know, on this, essentially on this either side of the pivot of the blade, whereas with washers it's one contiguous, theoretically, you know, flat surface, and so there's just a lot more even contact, and so it just feels smoother. So if you have a lot of knives with smooth out polished washers, you know, so I basically polished some skiff washers, put them in, and you know, I think I'm going to keep it that way, at least for the time being. It's not as snappy, but that's fine with me because I love the utility of having washers and just this feel. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like if you were to get a very well oiled piece of glass and slide a smooth marble that's also lubed up and just like it just, I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, I don't know how to describe it. But yeah, having it on washers, it feels great. Not as snappy, but still very satisfying. So yeah, this is you know, if they make a version with tie scales with this honeycomb milling, and lightened internally so that it's not like this chunky boy, that would be almost the perfect EDC button lock. At that point, it would just come down to blade shape, because for me, the perfect EDC blade has a Wharncliffe, like reverse tanto, sheep's foot-ish shape. So yeah, I love this knife. I've been carrying it a lot the last few months. But yeah, the next two are so the knives that often supersede this one for different reasons in a way. So here we go. Number two is probably one of the biggest surprises for me. Like in terms of, I got this knife intentionally. It was not like it was gifted to me and like, you know, I didn't want it or something like that, but I just wasn't expecting to like it as much. And it's the Chris Reeve Knives Umnumzon. This is in Magna Cut, and you can see it's the Tanto blade version. So the Umnumzon, this is, I guess, the oldest model on the table here. Like the model was originally released in 2008. Of course, it's gone through iterations and upgrades in steel. So the Umnumzon, I got this because I wanted, in a way, kind of like a knife that I could trust, a folding knife that I could trust to do anything. And, you know, after some initial weird, unexpected hiccups, you could say, this thing, I've put it through a decent amount of work. But before I get into that, I'll say the things I love: tight tolerances. I mean, it's kind of like a cliche that you hear about Chris Reeve knives, but it's for good reason. I mean, this thing is just, it's rock solid. It is so precise. It is so perfectly machined. I mean, obviously you start with the design, but then the execution in the machining and then the assembly, it almost feels like a fixed blade in terms of just how solid it is because of the tolerances. And so, yeah, so that leads into things like, and also other design elements, the strength of it, you know, having these external stops along with the integral lock, right? The frame lock, which is, you know, originally called the Reeve integral lock. This thing is strong as heck for a folding knife. It's not the strongest one in the world, I'm not saying that, but it is very strong, especially for a knife its size. It's not like one of those, I wouldn't call this an overbuilt knife. This is a strongly built knife, but not overbuilt. There's no like weird redundancies. Other things I love, the hollow grind, you know, for a knife that is so like strength oriented, or has strength at such a high priority, it still is pretty slicey. And I'll tell you this, I have batoned firewood twice on two separate occasions with this Umnumzon, and I've not stropped it since then. And now this is not going to be perfect, but like it's doing this after batoning firewood. Yes, like batoning like logs of firewood. It can do that. So I think that's a testament as much to MagnaCut as it is to the geometry of this blade. And I did reprofile this edge. I think from the factory it was like 18, 20 something. And I think I reprofiled it to like 22.5 degrees per side. So now that I've reprofiled it to a, you know, kind of a more working style edge, this is like, that blows my mind. You know, having done that for myself, that level of hard usage on it for myself, and I've done other things that are less hard but still, like, you know, working it. You know, this is a knife that I trust to do whatever I would need a knife to do, essentially. So yeah, this is great. You know, things like, I mean, even like the Tanto tip, and it's like this very, I don't know what the angle is on the tip, but you know, I trust it to pry and like not pry. I'm not trying to pry like nails out of wood, but I could if I wanted to, you know. But yeah, even things like just these blasted scales and the blade finish, like the aesthetic of this like hazy mirror-ish, like a high polish stonewash, just very refined while also being a very strong knife. So this is like, it's not number one for, I guess, kind of like irrational reasons maybe, but like this is the knife that would be the last knife I would sell, even though it's like so valuable. Like obviously if I was in some weird situation where I had to like liquidate valuables, then I might have to, but like this would be the last knife I'd want to sell, because at the end of the day, I like knives for, like, I like good knives for how useful they can be, not just how pretty they can be, you know, because some of the aesthetics in the eye of the beholder, like these are all pretty to me in different ways, but like this thing is like a performance machine, a performance tool that I believe could last me a lifetime, especially as long as I do my part to take care of it and not abuse it, which, you know, in a way, like I think using it well is borderline abusive. So yeah, it's just awesome. This is the last knife on this list that's on washers, and you know, American made titanium frame lock MagnaCut blade, you know, all the you know, kind of like the benchmarks of like a high performance modern day folder are in there. So number two, and yeah, I could make the case for it to be number one, but number one is, I guess, in a way, like kind of like that very subjective thing. I mean, this is all subjective, right? These are my top favorite knives. I'm not expecting anyone else to like agree that these are their top favorite or whatever, right? This is my top favorite that I bought this year specifically. So anyway, so number one, this might not be a surprise to some who have followed my channel for a while, but it is the Null Knives Voodoo. This knife is just, man, it checks almost every box for me. It'd be quicker to just say the things that it doesn't have that I want than to say all the things I love. But I'm going to say all the things I love because I want to keep it positive. I love this blade. I love the shape. I love the grind. I love the finish. I love the scalloping for like I guess you call them fullers maybe. And these, tri-way studs or whatever they're called. Just so many things about this blade. Like the length is perfect. Yeah, it's a great blade. M390 blade for those of you who are interested. And then the next huge, objectively, but thing that I personally appreciate is just the action on this. It is, I would say, overall the best action that I own. And on top of that, it just having on such great lockup, it is the most, it is a fall shut, but it is a very controlled fall shut. So I can disengage the lock bar. It'll stop on my thumb without, causing any major damage. And it just goes on its own. And man, it is just like, I think button locks are fidgety for their own reasons because of how quick you can disengage, but this is fidgety because of how smooth and controlled that action is for me. And like that reverse flick, I just love reverse flicking this. It's just so satisfying. Other things that are great about it, the ergos, just like how locked in I feel here, and I can choke it if I want to. There's a contour, overall contour to the scales, what else? And this is made, I believe it is manufactured by Riot, if I'm not mistaken. And so, both from a design, there's, I think it's easy to overlook. There's the design aspect of a knife, and then there's the execution in terms of the actual manufacturing and quality control and whatnot. I mean, this to me is like a perfect, is kind of like, not the pinnacle. I'm not gonna say the pinnacle, right? There's like no such thing as like the truly perfect knife, but it's close to perfect, design wise, execution wise, and then actual utility wise, like using it. There's a reason this blade shape is considered a very utilitarian blade shape, and so really, this was like, I thought I would like it because I had seen reviews before I bought it, but I like it way more than I ever anticipated I would like it, which is amazing. I love having that sort of experience with a knife. And so really the only thing that would make it perfect for me is if it was like, I really just don't care for micarta. I don't need micarta. If it was like a full tie with like maybe some milling for traction, and if it was Magna Cut or Vanex, like the blade, and then it would be essentially the perfect EDC knife for me. Like it'd be cool if it was button lock, but I don't need a button lock at this point. I enjoy these. Obviously, like there's only 3 button locks on this list. So yeah, that's my list. Top 10 knives I purchased in 2023. My first full year of collecting knives. It's not as extravagant of a collection and a list as some other YouTubers have, but that's, I'm not here to compare myself. I'm here to get the knives that I want and I think are, the most useful, the most, that appeal to my sensibilities and preferences and priorities, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I'd love to hear if you own any of these designs and if they would be in your top 10, just like of this year, or maybe even in general, just like in your collection. And if there's any knives that you think, based off of, kind of what I've expressed about my preferences and whatnot, if there's knives that aren't here that I don't own that you think I could crack this top 10. I'm not anticipating spending as much money on knives this coming year, just because I'm trying to shift, trying to make sure my priorities are aligned properly. But yeah, this is top 10 knives of 2023 that I purchased. So thank you everyone who has subscribed, has viewed videos of mine. My primary goal with this channel is to give information. It's like, entertainment is great as a side bonus, but to me, I value information. I'm someone who tries to garner a lot of information from others on YouTube, and so I just want to contribute to that world for those that do appreciate very thoughtful, very analytical, very purpose-driven, very practically oriented information. And so yeah, obviously this is not so much about information but just personal appreciation. So but yeah, in general, I just want to express my gratitude to everyone that has followed me I think I'm kind of getting close to 500 subscribers, which is cool. You know, I don't know if I'll go much beyond that. We'll see. But yeah, hope you have a great, you know, New Year's, and yeah, till next time, take care.